You know, this has to be one of the most incredible stories of artistic creation in all of history. It's a story about how just unimaginable loss became the raw material for an absolute masterpiece.
So, picture this. It's the mid-17th century, and we've got a man who is at his absolute lowest point. I mean, he lost his sight, his job, his political cause, and the people he loved most in the world. For all intents and purposes, he was completely and utterly broken.
And yet, from this place of total darkness, he decides to take on a project of almost unbelievable ambition. So the question is, how? How on earth did he do it? How does a man with absolutely nothing left create one of the most enduring works of literature ever?
And look, this wasn't just any project. In his own words, he was setting out to capture things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. I mean, the entire story of humanity's fall from grace. That was the epic scale of his vision for what would become Paradise Lost.
To really understand how he got there, we've got to rewind all the way to the beginning, to a young John Milton who was just full of hope, passionately searching for perfection, not in some distant heaven, but right here on Earth.
Milton was a prodigy, no question. He was born into this supportive, cultured Puritan family. His father was an artist himself and saw his son's genius really early on. Get this. From the age of 12, Milton would study until midnight, mastering multiple languages. At Cambridge, they even nicknamed him the Lady of Christ College because of his refined manners and youthful looks.
You see, for Milton, poetry wasn't a career choice. It was a divine calling. He truly saw it as his sacred duty to find and express the beauty of God's creation, and it was a quest he followed with just this relentless passion. And his search for paradise wasn't some abstract thing. No, it was very concrete. He believed he could actually help build it through three specific ideals. First, a perfect marriage, a true harmony of body and soul. Second, a purified church, totally free from corruption. And third, a free and virtuous English republic.
But every single one of those pillars was about to come crashing down. Milton's hopeful vision was about to slam right into a brutal, unforgiving reality.
The first ideal to crumble was marriage. He married Mary Powell, the daughter of a royalist, and the whole thing was a complete catastrophe. I mean, her family was cheerful and loud, he was serious and introspective. She actually left him for 3 years, which just shattered his dream of marital bliss. He argued that it was his very idealism about love that made the failure so much more painful.
And the next decade was just a cascade of unimaginable tragedy. In 1652, the same year he went completely blind, his first wife Mary died, and so did their infant son. He later remarried Catherine, who was the true love of his life, only for her and their infant child to die in childbirth just a year later. And then, the final blow, his political dream collapsed.
So when the monarchy was restored in 1660, the Puritan cause that he had fought for his entire adult life was just dead. He was arrested, thrown in prison, and stripped of everything. He was now blind, twice a widower, and a political outcast in his own nation. His paradise was utterly and completely lost.
Now, this really should have been the end of his story. I mean, it's enough to break anyone, but it wasn't. This is the crucial turning point where Milton began to reframe his greatest suffering, not as a curse, but as a profound and necessary gift.
In one of his most famous sonnets, you can just feel him wrestling with this. He's asking, how can God expect me to use my talent for poetry when my light is spent, when I'm blind? But he arrives at this powerful conclusion, a kind of surrender to God's will, finding a new purpose not in what he can do, but in acceptance.
It's like his life became the actual blueprint for his art. His shattered marriages, they gave him this incredible insight into the story of Adam and Eve's fall. The failure of his political cause became the epic war in heaven. And his physical blindness became the perfect metaphor for gaining true spiritual sight.
Milton actually came to believe that losing his physical sight was essential. It cut him off from all the world's distractions and allowed him, as he prayed, to see with an inner eye, to perceive divine truths that were invisible to mortal sight. His blindness, literally, became his vision.
So, armed with this whole new perspective, Milton began his great work. This is the final phase, where his life and his art just merge completely. The man who suffered so much poured all of that experience into his epic poem.
The process itself is just a testament to his will. I mean, just try to imagine this. Completely blind, he would compose these long, incredibly complex passages of poetry entirely in his head, commit them to memory, and then dictate them, line by line, to whoever was around to write them down. And this monumental effort, this wasn't some brief flash of inspiration, no way. This painstaking process of composing, memorizing, and dictating his epic took nearly a full decade. A decade spent in poverty, suffering from chronic pain. Every single line was an act of pure will.
So what was his reward for a decade of work that produced arguably the greatest epic poem in the English language? A grand total of 18 pounds, paid to him and his widow. It's a shocking figure that just proves he wasn't doing this for money or fame. It was for something much, much deeper.
And this is the central idea he arrived at, the absolute core message of Paradise Lost. It's this amazing paradox known as the fortunate fall. Milton argues that, yeah, Adam and Eve lost their innocence, but that very loss opened the door to something greater, the chance to develop virtues like compassion and wisdom, things that pure innocence can never know.
So his ultimate argument, forged in the fire of his own suffering, is that paradise isn't a garden you can be kicked out of. True paradise is something you build inside yourself. Adam and Eve, just like Milton himself, lost an external paradise, but they gained a far more profound internal wisdom by overcoming all that adversity.
And we'll end with Milton's own words, which just bring this entire journey full circle. He believed that to create truly great art, an artist has to first live a great and tested life. He had to become a true poem himself, a living composition of honor, virtue, and experience. In the end, John Milton didn't just write Paradise Lost, he lived it.